This is the art of plenty. We're going to get into it. We are getting into stress and work and the relationship between stress and work. Now, I know that if you have been around at all in the last 2-3 decades, I don't even know. How long have we been talking about stress? How long have we as a society been talking about the implications of work stress on your life? I feel like it is something that I have known about my entire adult working life. So I feel like it's probably something that has been known and something that we as a community of people have been aware of for a very long time. Now, part of that piece around stress, and I was thinking about this in relation to my daughter because she was taking her driving test, her first driving test the other day. And I was thinking about how a little bit of stress can increase your performance, especially on a situation like a test. So sometimes we welcome a little bit of that adrenaline kick that just that little bit of stress can give to us. It can increase our ability to perform, which is very different than the stress we experience when we actually can't cope. So if the test anxiety gets so high, and if you get overcome, you actually not able to perform the way that you would perform, but you actually do worse than what you would normally do. So it has the direct opposite. And that has to do with the amount of stress that your body has in that minute or that you are taking on impacts whether your performance improves with stress or whether it decreases with stress. Now, that idea of different capacities isn't just related to the amount of stress. It also has to do with how we as individuals experience things in our life and whether or not it makes it stressful for us. The thing that always comes to my mind when I think about different capacities is in relation to parenting. I've had so many people say things to me about how they don't know how I do it with the number of kids that we are currently raising, which will be the only number of kids that we raise. 5 is our number. But what happens is your capacity increases with the more things that you can do well. So when I often have that question asked of me, well, I don't know how you do it, I say it's the same way we do anything. The very first time you bring home a baby, child number 1, your stress increases because it's something new and you have to figure out your life now that it's different. And you have to figure out your life while maintaining the life of another person. And it's completely on you and your partner. And it's overwhelming and it's exciting and it's all of these things. And there is definitely stress in that. Now, here's the deal. That stress that you experience happens again when you bring home child number 2. But it's a little bit different. I remember when I brought home my second son, my first son, my second kid. And I remember the feeling that if somebody could just take care of my older child, then I would be able to do what I needed to do to take care of my baby. Whereas when the first baby came home, I felt like I really needed help with that baby and with just being okay with the new situation. But my capacity for caring for a newborn had changed because I had already gone through that experience. So when the second baby came home, I felt quite comfortable, but the stress was increased because I had another child that I also had to be responsible for, and I still had to maintain her life, even though there was this new baby in the picture. So it's different because every time a new baby would come home, our capacities would once again be stretched. But that experience of stress of bringing home baby number 5 isn't necessarily any different than the experience of bringing home baby number 1. There's things that you feel unsure about and concerned about, and your capacity just increases. So it's not that it's any more difficult, it's just different because it's a new place. And I think a lot of stress can really come from the idea of being in a new place. After listening back to today's episode, I realized that there was this incredible opportunity to share some of the tools and resources that I have used to combat stress and anxiety. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity to share them because they really did make a difference in my own life when I was struggling with a panic disorder. So if you want to access this incredible worksheet created by my colleague Haley, please go to the show notes where you can access it. We're going to get into this a little bit later in the episode where I talk about there's 2 different approaches for diving into dealing with stress and anxiety. And the worksheet is a collection of tools that you can use that fit into either one or 2 or both of these approaches for combating stress. But I don't want to give too much away because we dive into that a little bit later in the episode. So if you are watching this on YouTube and you're wondering why my clothes have changed and why I'm in a different wardrobe, it's simply because I couldn't let this opportunity to go by to create this worksheet for you and to share it with you. I think it's so relevant, and I hope it is something that supports you and that you are able to utilize. The other thing that's interesting about stress is how it is able to impact other areas of your life. I remember when I was doing my undergrad degree, it was in social work, and so much of the things that we were talking about in school, the things that I was reading about in the textbooks, the pieces that I was learning about, the case studies, it was so heavy. It was an extreme amount of reality. And during that time in my life, as I continued to dive further and further into the coursework, I found that I had less capacity to have reality in my entertainment that I was consuming. So what happened for me is that I was watching and learning real life stories about people that were struggling with addictions, or people whose relationships were breaking down, or the impact of abuse on children. And when I would go to unwind or read a book or watch a movie, I couldn't handle any more of that type of information or content, even though that those stories that I was watching on TV or reading in books, they didn't have to be true. They could be completely made up, but I had no more capacity for that type of reality, for that type of drama. And I found that the only type of movies I wanted to watch were like rated G. I couldn't handle anything. Even Disney sometimes was a bit much. And I just remember feeling like I wanted to laugh. I didn't want to have any more serious conversations. I didn't want to think about heartbreak or hurt or pain because my capacity for that was at its limit. And one of the things that stress does to us or can do to us is it greatly inhibits our ability to manage in other areas. This is why there are situations in family life where, well, I'll just give you an example. A kid comes home and they're completely unreasonable, and you're looking around wondering, what in the world's going on? What's happening? Like, nothing in our family life in this situation is causing this pressure. Because, I mean, come on, there are 5 kids. You know that there are situations that happen in our family home that do create pressure on one another. But a kid comes home and they're completely worked up for no apparent reason for what's going on. And it's the experience that they had at school that day that they're still feeling, whether it's they've got a test coming up or they had an argument with a good friend, or the teacher gave them trouble for something and they felt powerless in the situation, and they get home and it spills out. And you can see that stress that they're experiencing is rippling in to other areas of their life. These experiences with stress are nothing new. Just like I talked about when we first started today, you'd pretty much have to be living under a rock to have not heard something about stress management or about the impact that stress can have on us physically, emotionally, the impact that it has on our relationships. And I think that most people can probably think up a handful of things. They could probably count on both hands, no problem, list things that you can actually do to relieve stress. We know about food. We know about sleep. We know about decreasing alcohol. We know about meditation. We know about stretching. We know about exercise. We know about being grateful. We know about going outdoors. We get inundated with all of these things that we can be doing for our stress level. But here's the deal. The process of personal development, the process of professional development creates situations of stress, which I talk about in my previous episode about the pressure cooker. Just the idea that when we put ourselves into change, even though the change is good, even though the change is something that we want, it can have an impact on how we're experiencing the world. It can impact how we're feeling about things, and our stress level will respond to how we're feeling about things in those situations. It's just like bringing that baby home. You have wanted that baby, you've chosen that baby, you and your partner are excited that that baby is coming home. That doesn't cancel out the impact of having that stress from bringing baby home. And it's the same thing with personal development and professional development. When we are going out after that, when we're trying to create change in our life, that change that we're trying to produce, that we're desiring, can impact our stress level. And it can impact how we are living in the world and how we're responding to the situation that we are actually trying to change. The idea of the pressure cooker is that we need an opportunity to acclimatize to the situation. And that takes time when we go to the coast. So I don't live at sea level. I'm quite a bit higher. We live in the mountains. And when we go to the coast, one of my favorite things to do is run. And I'm not a big runner. I don't love running. I don't understand when people talk about how good they feel when they run. I do run. You know this if you listen to my episode about goals. But it's not a motivator for me. I would not be sad or disappointed or let down if I never went for another run in my whole life. Like it's not something that brings me joy. But I'm telling you, when I get to the coast, I feel like I could just run and run and run. I don't know if it's the air, but it just feels so good. And I think part of that is because my body is used to cardio up in the mountains. So when I get down to sea level, I have so much more potential and so much more. I just experience running totally different. And I'm sure there is a lot of science behind this. And again, this is nothing new, but there's this process of getting used to where you are. And that is what the pressure cooker is like, except for it's the reverse. It's as though somebody from sea level came up to the mountains and went for a run here. It is harder on your body. You have to climatize to that new level of pressure. And stress is like that. And being in the pressure cooker is like that. And if you're going to be a person who is going to want more out of your life and is going to be putting pressure on situations to create change for yourself, for your family, for your relationships, you're going to be experiencing this stress or some type of stress. So it's important to know and to figure out, is this stress that's related simply because I'm trying to create change and I'm figuring this out? Or is there a part of this stress that is more chronic, where it's always kind of just been underneath the surface? Because the impact of that chronic stress can be very impactful on our life over time. So chronic stress doesn't necessarily go away. It's like driving in traffic day after day after day, or living in an environment that's very loud. That's a different type of stress that you experience than when you have that intense pressure stress. So there are a gazillion resources for eliminating stress or decreasing the stress. But here's another tricky thing about it. You can't just eliminate a stressor, because when you eliminate a stressor, it can be replaced with other stressors. An example of that is divorce. You can be in a very difficult relationship and remove the relationship by getting a separation or by getting a divorce. And the first experience can be that things feel great. You feel free, you feel liberated. But the reality is that there is another impact that comes. There are other stressors that show up and replace the stress that the relationship was having, because there are a whole bunch of new stressors that come along with the process of going through divorce and the process of living after divorce. So eliminating the stressor is not necessarily an answer that can impact your stress level over a long period of time. Part of what we need to do to decrease our stress is create new coping mechanisms. One of the ways that I've always loved to think about stress is that we can do coping mechanisms that approach it on two different levels. And I usually apply this to anxiety, but anxiety and stress are super related. In fact, I would say that they're the same thing. It's just we have certain things that we apply when we say the word anxiety compared to stress. So I think that this analogy or this picture works with both. And I like to think of a teeter-totter. So when we are reducing stress or when we are reducing anxiety, we have two ways that we can go about it. We can increase our peace, which is like one side of the teeter-totter. And by doing that, the anxiety, which is on the other side, comes down. Or we can do things that drop the anxiety, that drop the stress, and inadvertently raises our peace level. So there's two ways that we can approach this that will have the same impact on decreasing our stress. Now, I think the best strategies are when we do things that do both. So things that increase peace are things like breathing exercises, getting exercise, having a good night's sleep, learning to breathe. Those are all peace increasing exercises. Whereas decreasing stress exercises are things that we are taking away or removing from the situation. Things like reducing alcohol intake or reducing our workload. Those things decrease the pressure, provided the pressure is related to work. Now, I've been thinking about this because I was thinking about the stress that work things can have on our life. And as adults, you've probably heard me say this if you have been listening to me at all, is we spend so much time at work. So much of our life is work, which can be an amazing thing, or it can be a horrible thing, or anywhere in between. And for me, I think that if we can manage our stress at work, then we have a great propensity to manage the rest of our life and to manage our stress in the rest of our life, because there's no separation. There's no work-life balance when it comes to stress. Automatically, the stress that we experience in our work impacts our life, just like the stress in our life leaks into our work. And the reason why is because we take the same body, the same emotions, the same thoughts, the same reactions to both situations. We don't arrive at work and get to strip off our physiological reactions to things, or our memories, or our thoughts, or our feelings. It's the same person that goes from work and then home from work. Or if you work at home, it's even much more obvious that it's the same person that goes back and forth. So we can't separate that part of us. And if we can increase our peace and decrease our stress at work, then what happens in our life is that our peace increases and our stress decreases. And it's the same in our personal life. In our personal parts of our life, if we can increase our peace, if we can decrease our stress, then how we experience work will shift. Because there's no separation. It's the same person who goes to both things. It's you. You're the one that's living your life. You're the one that's going to work. So I've been thinking about this, and I've been thinking about what are the things that we can shift? Is there something that we can do right now that decreases the stress that we are connecting to work or connecting to life, depending on where you're at today? And if you're watching on YouTube, you may have noticed that I have no makeup on today. Now, I gotta be honest, I feel like I'm putting myself out there a little bit with this. I don't wear a lot of makeup. And if you know me in my walking around life, if you know me off camera, you know that it's very often that you won't see me with makeup. I do most things without makeup when I'm filming, or when I'm on camera, or if I'm presenting, or if I'm out in public doing something work related. I usually will wear makeup, not necessarily to a staff meeting or anything like that. But if I have to present myself, I wear makeup. It makes me feel more confident. I feel more put together. I feel more professional. And I have just enough vanity related to this that I want to look a certain way when I'm on camera. I want to look youthful. And this at times creates stress for me. When I think about coming to record a podcast, to talk with you and to share the things that are on my heart, sometimes I feel stressed or anxious about the time that it's going to take for me to put my face on. And you got to hear me. It does not take me a long time to put on my face. I'm not wearing an extraordinary amount of makeup. It's probably a 20-minute job. And I've been steadily decreasing what I've been doing. Like, I used to wear lashes. I'm not wearing lashes anymore. In part, it's because my lashes are finally back. Amazing. But I've just been gradually decreasing how much makeup. No shadow. I'm just wearing just the primer on my eyelids at times. But it still creates stress and pressure. So when I was coming over today to think about recording this episode, I thought, you know what? This is a way that I can decrease a little bit of stress. But just like I said, you can sometimes, when you remove a stressor, you create new stressors. So I wondered with myself, am I going to be okay with not having makeup on? Is that going to increase my stress later on when I see how the filming comes out and I see what my eyes look like without makeup, or when I see my eyebrows without a little bit more dark color with filling in some spots? But I ultimately decided that this was something that I wanted to release today. This was a place where I could release just a little bit of pressure that I've created. And remember, I created that stress. Nobody has told me that I need to wear makeup for these things. But I've created that, and I want it that way. I do prefer how I look on camera with makeup. But I also knew that I needed to get over here, and I needed to get this done today. And that little bit of stress was something that I thought, you know what, if I could just take care of that, it would free me up to do what I needed to do today in a way that the burden was decreased. And that's what I want to leave you with today. I want to challenge you to think about, is there something small that I could do in my work or in my personal life that could decrease my stress just a little bit? Or the other side of the teeter-totter, is there something you could do today that would just increase your peace just a little bit? I would love to hear from you. I would love to know what you're doing. What have you decided that you're going to try out? It would mean a lot to me to hear. And part of the reason why I want to know what you would do is because we learn from each other. When we share the things that we're doing, it changes us because we get to witness what other people are doing, but we also get to be encouraged when we listen to others and we see other people making gains. It encourages us that we can push ourselves and we can try new things. And it gives us lots of creative ideas. Like, oh, okay, that person over there is doing a breathing exercise before they open their emails. Okay, maybe I could employ that breathing exercise before I go on my sales call. So it's a way for us to generate ideas when we share. So please consider sharing what you've done or how this episode spoke to you. Ultimately, it's a big deal. It is a big deal trying to figure out how to live your best life. And it's something that takes ongoing effort and ongoing learning. And because it takes ongoing effort and ongoing learning, we ultimately open the door or expose ourselves to experience stress related to that. And this is all about trying to figure out ways to decrease that so that you can continue on your journey to becoming the person that you were meant to be. This episode was created for you, for your entertainment. It's not meant to replace professional help. If you're feeling like you need help, please reach out to someone. There are so many skilled therapists and counselors that are working in your hometown, in your area, that could help shed light. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me. It's been an honor that you would tune in and listen. This is The Art of Plenty, and we're in it together. I'm Amy McInnes. Thank you for joining.